don't know how powerful your voice is. They don't want to hear another legislator. They don't want to hear somebody else that's advocating. Sometimes they just want to hear that personal story.
The only way to stop asbestos-related cancers is to ban it.
About 40,000 Americans die every year of asbestos-caused diseases.
Okay, well, I want to just say a few words and honor people that we've lost in the last year. First of them is Jim Fight. Jim Fight was a personal friend of mine, as well as a fellow in the struggle for justice, and he organized the White Lung Association in 1978 or 1979 in the shipyards in Southern California. He had a background in civil rights, and he was just an extraordinary person. The White Lung Association played a role that the plaintiffs' lawyers couldn't in things like the Manville bankruptcy, when the judge of the bankruptcy court had to decide, well, how do we sort out what to do with Johns Manville's enormous liabilities? How are we going to sort that out? And there needed to be a voice of the victims separate from the plaintiffs' lawyers committee that was part of that bankruptcy process. And Jim was out there picketing and protesting and testifying in Judge Liflin's court, which would affect millions of people in its determination of just how that bankruptcy was resolved. That was in the 1980s. White Lung put out newsletters, organized conferences, led demonstrations at courthouses. They just played an enormously important role at a key time. And when we had the spy investigating us, Rob Moore, I knew that Jim had spent his life dodging various types of surveillance, and all of his life being involved in kinds of activities, civil rights activities, and so on. And so I asked him, what did he think about the fact that Rob Moore said that he had always been persuaded after meeting us that we were really right. He never gave the asbestos anything they didn't already know, and he really sympathized with us. He just took their money, about $500,000 over 4 years. And Jim Fight said, that's what they all say when they get caught. I mean, it was an instinctive reaction of, yes, I've had people doing surveillance of me most of my life, and that's what you can expect. So he later went on to work at Cecil County, Maryland, maintaining, in charge of the school buildings, and was a leader in the development of processes for certification and regulations for asbestos abatement in the United States. As I say, he was a deep personal friend and a great loss. The next person I want to mention is Dr. David Eagleman, who died at the age of 71. David was a really courageous medical doctor. He was involved, he was an expert on isocyanates, the chemicals that were involved in the Bhopal disaster, and asbestos and many drugs. He got involved in all kinds of litigation involving some of the drug companies, and brought about some, I'm sure, important changes in that sphere as well. Then he took over the International Journal of Occupational and Environmental Health, which had been started by Dr. Joe Ledoux, and continued that journal. This was a journal where we could publish about public health and corporate crime and not have the usual kinds of difficulties getting these things into print. They were welcomed by this journal. And that started with Joe Ledoux in 1995 and continued under Dr. Eagleman's editorship from 2007 to 2017, when the journal was bought up by some corporate publisher, and all of the people on the editorial board resigned. These were just important. He investigated the asbestos industry's lies. He wrote something called ABC, Anything But Chrysotile, The asbestos industry had published, these scientists had been working for the asbestos industry for 30 years in Quebec, published these articles in the late 90s saying that there are central and peripheral mines, and the real problem with mesotheliomas is that some of these mines have tremolite contaminating the chrysotile, but chrysotile doesn't cause mesothelioma. And so Eagleman went and investigated that and found that it was complete nonsense. There was absolutely no geologic or basis for any of this. And so he published this very thorough debunking of that ABC. So anyway, I just want to honor David Eagleman. He had tremendous courage in confronting corporate crime. And the last person I want to speak of is Romana Blasotti Parvesi. Romana was a powerful voice. She died at the age of 95 within the last week. She was the leader of the asbestos victims group in Casale Monferrato in Italy, a town that was almost just devastated by having this gigantic Eternit asbestos cement pipe and sheet plant operating there for 70 or 80 years. And Romana's husband worked there and died of mesothelioma. In 1983, she became the president of the Association of Families and Victims of Asbestos, AFIVA, the Asbestos Victims Group in Casale. That was from 1988 until for the next almost 30 years, during which time her sister, her nephew, her cousin would die also of mesothelioma. And Romana was a fearless voice. Shame on you, she would say to the media when the corporates offered a last-minute settlement. Well, Stefan Schmidheine's lawyers offered a last-minute settlement to block the first of the criminal trials in 2010. So she was really a remarkable person, and we remember her too for her courage. So thank you.